Right, shall we get this pantomime horse of a podcast underway for, is it, I don't know what week it is. Is it week 23 or
Well, who
episode 20?
knows?
Yeah, we
Let's.
lost track of time. Maybe I should stop counting. Maybe I should stop counting
I
and
think
just get
so.
on with
Yeah,
it.
eventually it'll be 2,742.
That's right. We'll be really doddery. Oh, actually, or should I say more doddery than we are now?
That's right. Yeah.
Right, Dodderer, what have you got on your list for this week, fella?
Well, I've got a sort of random collection of things that I'd like to share. I've got some
Mhm.
client stories, as always, things we've been working on. Talk about EHCPs. So if that's your interest, that's education
What's an
healthcare
yeah,
plans. Those are the things that schools, colleges, and other organisations, I presume, receive to describe special educational needs. And so there's quite a lot of work that goes into making sure they are managed well. So I'd love to talk about that.
okay.
And yeah, a few other bits as we go. I saw Microsoft have signed a deal with Mistral, the French large language model.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't mind talking a little bit about that and data sovereignty and LLM sovereignty. But
Yeah.
yeah, and a few other things to share. What about you?
Cool. Well, I've got a big hacking story it's not linked to Mistral, but it's sort of adjacent. So there's some themes around that stuff that we need to explore. Just security in general is problematic. I wanted to talk about evidence from AI and how we build trust and what we do about that, because that is just becoming much more important, I think, in the conversations we've had, and kind of, I guess, although we haven't talked about it, links to the EHCP stuff, if I've got the
Definitely,
acronym correct.
actually does, yes.
Yeah, and then a really interesting story about how AI, when it's used well, can increase productivity. So those are the things
Nice.
on my mind. So where should we start? Should we start with
Evidence.
evidence? Okay,
All right,
dokie.
yeah, you share your evidence, and then I can talk about EHCPs because that's essential in there as well, and housing, in fact. But yeah, go
Well,
on.
yeah, it was linked to the housing stuff that we've been doing with people, and just because I had to put the stuff on the website, I had to learn it and think about it and go through it. And actually, the kind of the process that people go through and the process the tool goes through when it goes, right, here's the question you asked me, here's the responses, so we know that stuff's got to be accurate, but then here's the stuff that I've cited. But the other piece that you showed me earlier in the week about, actually, here's the other documents I consulted. I didn't actually cite them in this response, but I consulted with these things, produces that or helps to produce that kind of evidence. And then being what might be described as the evidence drawer, so where you keep your information. So being able to go to your filing cabinet drawer and say, right, okay, pull out the history of that conversation, pull out all of the information that you used and the sources cited, and then how do you take all of that stuff and put it into an evidence pack? So if a regulator comes along and says, show me, prove it to me, you can just
Yeah.
press the button and go, ta-da, there it is. And I don't know anybody else that's doing anything like that. I've not seen anything like that. But it just feels to me that is just going to become so important, and not just in housing, but also in the stuff we're doing with social care, the stuff we're doing with education, and actually even in private sector businesses, you can just see somebody going, hang on a minute, where did that come from? Or why
Yeah.
did you say that? And what did your AI, you've told stories on here before about organizations that said, oh, it wasn't us, Gov.
Yeah.
Was it in the German company or the German court that said, you
Yeah.
you have to stand by what your
That's
AI
right.
said? And
Yeah. And there was a
so,
Canadian airline, the same
oh,
thing with a
that's right.
Canadian airline as well. But yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So that whole evidence production. So it moves from being something that people talk about into actual a product, for want of a better expression, because if an auditor or internal or external comes along and says,
Yeah.
where did you get that from? You can just press the button and go, ta-da, there it is.
Exactly.
I think it's just so powerful. So yeah, I'm
And I
really
think
excited about it.
yeah, I agree entirely because I mean we've always tried with KnowledgeFlow to make it as explainable as you can. but we've now gone quite a few steps further than just simply, the way we've been running explainability and knowledge flow is that you can, if you wish, turn on view reasoning, and it will show you what it is choosing to do with the prompts you've put in. So it tells you how it's interpreting what you've asked, which is often very illuminating. You're like, oh, I see now why. Oh, yeah, I should have written that more clearly, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
And then the citations as the sort of second part of knowledge flow, which will show you, the documents that it has used to construct its answer. But to go further and to show the documents it consulted with as well, and the model and the steps and a whole bunch of other additional things in the evidence pack, which is then becomes an immutable record, I think is really important. It helps with individual user explainability, and as you say, auditors, ombudsman, in their world of housing, they will have a multi-stage complaint process. So certainly stage 1 and stage 2, and maybe some more. And then it will end up with an ombudsman if the complainer is not satisfied. And apparently the ombudsman's first thing is, right, show me all the evidence, give me the backstory. So the idea that you can at least show your AI involvement is so transparent, it is so much better in terms of governance. So and it also EHCPs, which I touched on. So one of the first steps of when a college, CMS, who are building these tools for at the moment, but one of the first steps is they will receive from a local authority a EHCP and a consultation request, which basically says, we'd like to place this learner with you. Can you have a look and confirm that you can meet or not meet the requirements, and any additional costs that we'll need to consider for special support needs. And it's huge. EHCP is a huge document and written in quite a lot of kind of technical medical style language. So I mean, and they receive quite a few of them. It's hard yards. So we've built the tools that will take an EHCP privately and securely within their data platform, so you can handle it, and then pull out all of the needs and then match those to the college availability and provide your sort of first review, really. And that definitely needs the evidence pack behind it, because that is the stuff of challenge and probably frequently is challenged. So to be able to sort of present the whole, this is exactly what was considered. And if you think about it, the alternative, the human version, I've talked to a few people this week about accuracy of AI, and you get it to do things like this. And I say, it is normally more accurate than a human will be. And if you think about a human explainability of that process, I mean, it's quite difficult you think what we're trying to build in an evidence pack is something that stands up to scrutiny. But if you think, if I'd said to you, well, you read this EHCP and you made this view, show me your evidence. You'd be like, well, that's the EHCP, and then here's some knowledge about what the college can offer. And you're like, well, that's not good enough. What was the thinking process you went through? Well, I don't know. I can't explain
I thought about it. I had a cup of coffee and I had a little think about it, and then I wrote some stuff down. That's how it worked.
Yeah, exactly. So trying to kind of get better than that.
Show me your coffee cup.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't believe it was coffee. It's tea, wasn't it? So I think that's really, really key. And as you rightly say, I think this is the stuff that is where it counts. As the sort of strap line that I've used around this a bit is AI you can put your company name to, knowing that it's right, knowing that it's, or at least as close to right as it can be, and you've got you can explain why, not just it's magic. And it takes me right back into I had a conversation with a college group this week, and I got this age-old, but Copilot could do that. So firstly, I had to explain that it couldn't do it, like technically would struggle big time. But also, it's the ignorance that comes from, if you do a retrieval step with Copilot Studio, you see the magic. Or Notebook LM, same thing, you see the magic. But if you don't have any idea what's working there, then how can you ever know whether you're getting accurate results? You can read the answer, but unless you've read all of the documents and all of it, I mean, you're never going to really know. So I think being able to kind of get into that a little bit with evidence and show what was used, what wasn't, is another counter to that.
I think that is interesting, that whole kind of Yeah, you go ahead and do it with Copilot, and then prove the accuracy of what you've just said, and the sources, and. So yeah, I do.
And it's all about preference, really. Is all you hear back. Well, I liked it more. It's like, well, that's not good enough, frankly. I don't care if you liked it more. I mean, obviously, I do a bit, but really, you want to know that it's more robust, or you can explain it better, or whatever. You want data, not.
Yeah.
I just preferred the color blue to the color pink, so I liked it.
Yeah,
I've been ranting. Go on, sorry.
No, go on, rant away.
I was going to rant. Oh, I've been ranting about Copilot again, and I think I touched on the podcast before about the early days of the internet and how everybody had their own websites. So I was at Department for Education, as were you, and all the policy teams created websites, microsites. They hired web development teams, external, built them, branded them, hosted them somewhere, and used that. And it was like the height of innovation. Wonderful.
It was.
And then caused no end of trouble later when you're trying to bring them all together and have one voice. It strikes me that Excel is not dissimilar. And Excel sort of arguably a bit closer to Copilot. Give everyone Excel. Well, now I can create a database for my team, or just for me probably, and it will be slightly wronger than the main one, but that's all right. It works for us. And then there's another one over there and another one over here. And I think Copilot agents, particularly when people are building stuff for them or their teams, we're right back into that space again.
Yeah.
We've got the pain, and annoyingly, until people are hit with the pain, they're not going to notice. They all think it's wonderful innovation, and I like that people are innovating with AI, but I think that it's time to have a little word with yourself if you're an organization and think about the governance and strategy that you're actually trying to run.
Yeah, and I think that for an IT director or CIO or whatever title for a large organization, just thinking through that kind of, oh my gosh, what are people actually doing with this thing, and actually how are we going to control that is actually quite difficult if you haven't got any guardrails on it, and you've got no visibility. I remember in the early days of cloud, and I was talking to Microsoft Azure guys, and they were trying to sell into higher education. And their pitch was to the CIO types and saying, you need to control your cloud spending, because right now what you've got is a whole load of people in each department going, I tell you what, we need some cloud storage. You just go, let's get my credit card out and I'll put it on expenses and I'll just load up something in AWS. So you've now lost control of your intellectual property. So you can see that kind of pattern. You're right. It is occurring now, where people are creating these things and there's no real control. But there needs to be, and one of the reasons there needs to be is one of the big stories this week. I don't know if you saw it, but OpenAI were using 5.6 SOL and an unspecified model, a new one, which is apparently much more powerful, and it broke out of a supposedly secure sandbox. And
I did hear that.
Hugging Face, which one of the things that Hugging Face does apparently is some kind of, it puts the models through the tests and benchmarks them. And what it was trying to do was it was trying to break in to get the process and the question. So it was effectively trying to cheat. It was trying to get what the benchmarks are at. So it was trying to make sure it could answer the questions in the way that was most advantageous to it. So not only did it break out of a supposedly secure, it attacked an organization in order to try and cheat. But the bit that was really interesting to me, and this comes back to the sovereignty issue, which we've talked about before and we will undoubtedly talk about again. But when Hugging Face tried to use the American models to fight the attack, apparently it said no, it's too guardrailed, and we won't allow you to do it. So it was in effect, it was helping the attacker but not helping the defender. And allegedly, I say allegedly very carefully, they had to go and use Chinese models in order to repel the attack from OpenAI. So fascinating piece of just thinking through that stuff. And I've been thinking about our security and how we create multi-layered security, so that in our personal lives and actually in our work lives, but we're used to kind of multi-factor authentication. We're used to passkeys. We're used to looking at our faces, for example, or fingerprints and stuff. But actually, once most organizations, once you're in, you're in. There's no moating, or there's no kind of
Yeah, single sign-on and all that. Yeah.
yeah, it just opens up the floodgates. And I think it's one of the things that when we see Donald next week, it's on my list of things to talk about, along with lots of other things. But yeah, security is terrifying, and we just need to make sure that whatever we do, we've got it locked down as absolute best we can, because the attacks are only going to come more frequent, aren't they?
Yeah,
They're not
indeed,
going to slow down.
No, indeed.
Yeah.
And I mean, AI-driven attacks and quantum computing, which is very, very early days, but its unbelievable abilities as to the stuff that is mind-bending, how fast it can make calculations and in quantum. And I read an article this week, interestingly, in quantum. So just to bring more terror to the world of security,
to frighten our audience even more.
Indeed, there's a European company that's managed to, they say, create quantum chips which run at room temperature, and you can just put them in your usual server racks. And I mean,
Wow.
because the problem with quantum has been the big models, as you know. I mean, they're a tiny little chip, but it has to be running at 0 Kelvin. Minus, was it 273, isn't it, Kelvin?
57. We obviously both failed our physics
Yeah.
GCSE or I don't even
I did physics A level as well, and I still can't remember. It's something anyway. But it's very cold. Absolute zero is
colder than my house, Kieran. Colder than my house.
Well, I reckon they invented the Kelvin scale around your house when they realised that nothing else went low enough.
Yeah, it's when I wouldn't put the heating on in the winter again.
Exactly. But you can pre-order these chips now, apparently. So who knows whether that, I mean, it's be interesting to see. Built on with diamonds, apparently. So if they don't work, you might be able to make them into a ring or something from Mrs. Watkins. She'll be pleased.
She will. She'll be delighted. I can't imagine those quantum chips are cheap either. I don't suppose you had a price tag on there.
I didn't see. I was toying with. I did think to myself I should go and find out how much they are. Yeah, you imagine they are probably rather pricey. I was on price, interestingly, and I know you've got a productivity story which would be good to talk about. But I keep reading about articles where leaders of lots of firms saying they're not getting the benefit from the spend on AI, and there's not, the ROI is not yet there. And my hypothesis is because it's kind of, dare I kick it again, it's the co-pilot story. It's that we've given everybody access to something that is going to be a good productivity boost, but not transformational. And that's costly. And if you license it to everybody and allow people to use it, it's going to cost you some money, and you're not really going to see any real gains, because it's all going to be taken up in an extra coffee break or knocking off 20 minutes earlier or whatever for now. But you've got a productivity story from.
Well, I'll before I tell you the productivity story is interesting, but the whole kind of return on an AI investment, and people say, where's the money coming from? Google allegedly put out its results this week, and they're up massively. Cloud computing up 82%. They've got a massive backlog, like $500 billion worth of backlog, and Gemini's just gone through 950 million users. So the Alphabet have managed to kind of monetize that bit, and it's because I think they own all the bits. They own the infrastructure, they own the data centers, they own the mechanisms. So they own the layers. So that is really interesting. But I think. So that there are obviously organisations, and because they obviously were, how should you say, more cash rich than others, they didn't have to go away and borrow a lot of money. They could do it. I think they're in a much better position than some of the others. But being able to
so their ROI is coming from effectively being the supplier. They are in the gold rush. They are the one making the shovels, aren't they?
That's right. Yeah, as you've often said, those people made the most money selling shovels, not panning for gold. Yeah. But the productivity story is interesting. So it's Procter & Gamble, so big organisation, very credible. They ran a test with 791 users across different departments, and the results of the test allegedly were along the lines of the productivity from one person with AI matched or beat the productivity of two-person teams doing the similar tasks. But that wasn't the whole story. The bit that was interesting to me was the outputs that they produced were much better, more balanced, and it broke down sort of traditional silos. So when you,
Yes.
which is a massive problem for most organisations, how do you get sales to talk to finance, to talk to R&D, and da 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 da. So they used it in order to help produce better information, documents, reports, which were much more balanced, much more nuanced, and actually took the organisation into account. So I thought that was a really interesting story about, and a good news one, rather than the kind of whole co-pilots causing us problems. So
And I love that, because I think I've talked a lot about the idea that AI will find new insights, partly because generative AI can see reports and written words as if they were structured data almost. So you can suddenly access all of that stuff that's stored
yeah,
in files and folders all over the place. But also that cross fertilization. And as you will know from many moons ago, I have a kind of theory of innovation, that it's the intersection of different disciplines and sectors is really one of the core places where innovation stems from. And that was backed up when I read an article about the Renaissance, and apparently in the
ooh, get you.
Renaissance Europe. Yeah, get me big words and highfalutin titles. But apparently, so that when they brought together sort of artists and musicians and engineers, I mean, artists often were engineers in those days, weren't they? But bringing together all of these kind of different disciplines seems to have driven a huge sort of flood of new ideas and innovation at that around the same period. So
Yeah,
there is some loose anecdote, at least, that supports the idea that this intersection, and that for organizations, I said to the King's Fund many moons ago when we were talking to them about the idea that the King's Funds, they have enormous 100 years of research and different, all their papers in their libraries. If you could get those all into an AI brain or a massive RAG index and start to look across the disciplines, I bet you there's gold in there. And the idea that, I mean, as I laughingly say, and this will show you my ignorance really, but at the moment, you've got ear, nose, and throat specialists, and then you've got the leg, knee, and toe specialists, and whatever. But and ultimately, there's so much to learn in any one of those, and you end up very specialist, presumably within one as a healthcare worker, I presume.
yeah.
The idea that you can simultaneously look across all of those disciplines and see patterns and things that you were never viewable before, I think there's just some really interesting stuff in there. So I'm delighted to hear Procter and Gamble got their are they still called that, or are they just P&G now?
P&G,
Is
yeah.
it
Well, I don't
come
know.
come to that? But I'm delighted to hear that they are benefiting from some of that cross fertilization.
I'll share a story with you. It's not AI related at all, but my daughter-in-law's father was a cardiac consultant. He's a top cardiac consultant in Wales, apparently. And I said, "Oh, wow, yeah, big job and blah." He said, "To be honest, Neil, I did heart because it was easy. There's only 4 things can go wrong. So if you don't get it right the first time, you get it." I was like, "You lazy son." But he was like, "Yeah, no, I just got to make it easy on myself. I just do the easy one."
Wow, who knew? Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Yeah,
Love it. Well, I
well,
am
there you go.
back to AI story. I delivered a training session yesterday for one of our client teams. They've just sort of appointed an AI champions team whose job is going to be to sort of get into strategy, thinking about the organization's AI strategy and helping teams sort of think about AI in their role. And I did some updated my research on AI use in their sector. So education is where they play. And interestingly, so the National Education Union, the NEU, in February did a big survey of members on use of AI. Still 49% of schools don't have an AI policy, which is pretty crazy.
Wow.
So I
When they
certainly
can
might.
download for one for free from us.
They certainly can. www.leadingai.co.uk.
Great
Go
stuff.
to there, get ours. But interestingly, here was a thing that was described as a policy paradox. 76% of students, so this is uni students, said that they understand when and how to use AI in assessment very clearly, but only 7% of lecturers said that they felt it was clear. So that is quite weird, isn't it? Because you're like, yeah, I'm really, really clear, but the person marking it doesn't actually know.
Yeah,
So
indeed.
how clear are you really then?
Does that give you better? Does that get you better marks or worse? I'm not quite sure.
Who knows? But I mean, it's a challenge, isn't it? If you're not even setting a policy out for how students and staff should and can be using AI, you're kind of opening yourself up for quite a lot of challenge, I feel.
You are indeed. Yeah, you would have thought you would have thought it was pretty basic to have an AI policy for organisations these days. It's been around for quite a while, and
Yeah,
especially for schools where they know the kids are using it. It's like,
yeah,
crikey, if you haven't got a policy on that and how it's going to be managed, then yeah, you're opening yourself up to all sorts of cans of worms, aren't you?
yeah, exactly. I mean, what can you do about
Especially
it?
with data protection and GDPR and
Yeah,
all of that stuff. What,
yeah,
what are you losing out the door?
yeah, crazy, isn't it?
Mm,
I we're getting together with Donald, aren't we, for a
yeah.
afternoon session. I'm looking forward to that. So we're going to be
You make it sound like that's a drinking session. It's not. It's a working
no,
session.
no,
No
it is
drinking
working.
till afterwards.
No, indeed. We've got lots to talk about, and including this kind of continued shift into the regulatory evidence space and a few other bits as well. But shall we share our big, scary, hairy, audacious potential goal?
Go on then.
But so I think we've talked before on here about this, but I've certainly talked about the idea that with AI as an overlay platform above your data sets, the need for unique specialist tools, such as, for example, a CRM tool or an HR database or whatever, or indeed a whole ERP system, the need for all of those is at least questioned. It might not, there's lots of reasons it might still be very useful to keep them. But with an AI overlay that can look straight into any SQL database that you give it access to and draw stuff from over here back in the CRM with something over here in your orders platform with something up here from your HR system. That gets quite interesting. Anyway, our big, hairy, scary, audacious exploration is whether we should be using our KnowledgeFlow overlay to then drive into those systems and effectively take over and say you don't need a CRM, all you need is a SQL database running behind the back of KnowledgeFlow, and it can do everything that your CRM can do. Oh, and by the way, you can also put your HR system in, etc.
It is really interesting because we in everything ICT, we've got a challenge with vendor lock-in on a couple of products and being able to access data, which is our data, and we've put it in, but we can't get it out, is to me completely bloody ridiculous. And their excuses for not being able to do it are weak, to say the least. So, and that happens a lot in lots of organisations. I mean, one of the things, speaking of big, hairy, audacious goals, you were like, "Oh, should we just write an MIS system?" and somebody's come back to me and said, "Actually, that might not be a bad idea for the FE sector because." Apparently there's one kind of big supplier and it's a challenge. So yeah, I do think and in my kind of vision of the future, I've talked to a few people about recently, including you, that whole kind of actually could we, for lots of organizations, especially startups, but even for legacy ones, well, okay, what have you got? What do you need it for? What's the workflow process? Actually, you don't need to be spending X on the CRM, Y on your finance piece or whatever else. So I think there is definitely going to be a market for that kind of tool where you just need something basic to access it. So yeah, that is genuinely exciting. I think that is a really interesting future. I think one of the things about that though, and this is back to my geopolitical thing about AI sovereignty and data and all of that stuff. You mentioned earlier the whole kind of Mistral going into Azure into the UK, which is actually much more important than I think our audience will realize, because actually being able to model switch, we can already, we've proven we can do it, and we've already proven that we can do the agent switch, the assistant switch in KnowledgeFlow. So it picks the right tool for the job. So if you've got an index of marketing material, or you've got an index of policy information, or you've got an index of technical documentation and you put something in, it can automatically switch to actually this is the assistant you need for that particular answer. So lots of that smart stuff is already built in, but being able to pick the best model for the job. I've been asked about it again from a organization working in that geopolitical field. And I think as soon as we can access more models, that we can make that a reality. So I know it's slow and I know it's difficult, but people don't realize that, you know, what they see on the free models is yeah, you get all the bells and whistles, but you can't get it in a secure environment in the UK at this point in time, which is a massive challenge. Back to
we always
security
seem to be, the UK South region always seems to be quite far down Microsoft's list of priorities, which is annoying. I think somebody was saying to me that's because Sweden in Europe always get everything first, as far as I can see, whenever I check what models are available. And there's something to do with their own usage of Microsoft environment, and this stuff is apparently much greater than ours, so they like to test it there first, apparently. So yeah, who knew? And they also then do it in stages with their trusted partners first within each of those regions to get usage up, test it, and apparently Sweden is a better place to go testing this stuff than the UK.
Well, I think the reason that they don't put UK higher up is because you're always slating Copilot. You're always slagging it off.
Probably that's what it is. Yeah, they've heard. They've probably had the whole senior team listening and in fury. And suppressing our podcast from getting out and about around the place.
Correct. Yeah. Now we know that we've got more than one listener. They're too dangerous, those guys. We need to shut them down. We need to shut them down.
By getting out and about. I was going to share with you an amusing anecdote to as we round off our podcast about a delivery failure. So as you know, there are and interestingly, I was having this conversation yesterday, bizarrely, about allowing users to choose the delivery partner for whatever thing you're buying is a really sensible choice. Apparently on Vinted you do this. It was on part of the training session we were talking about it. And putting the power into the hands of the user. So if they hate Yodel, I think Yodel have renamed themselves again because they have such a bad reputation. But if you hate a particular one, then pay the extra £1 to get the one you want. And now you're in control, and now it's your responsibility for tracking and all of that stuff. Not a bad idea, I think. Anyway, I was reminded of the time when some flowers were delivered outside my where I live here, and they were incorrect. They were for the wrong place. And I saw the flowers, and they were fresh flowers, and I was like, oh, and I was just going out, and I thought, I'll tell you what, it's not very far away. It's literally like 100 meters up the road. I'll go and drop it off because fresh flowers, no one's going to love them. Anyway, so off I went, and it was a block of flats up there, and I rang on the doorbell and said, hi there, I've got some flowers that were delivered for you. And the chap goes, all right, bring them up. And then buzzes the door. So I was like, oh, okay. So 3 flights of stairs I went up. And I knocked on his door, and I was, like ready to get the praise and the joy of. Anyway, and I knocked on the door. He opened the door, took the flowers, went thank you, and shut the door. So to this day, he thinks I'm just a delivery chap from a flower company.
There's hope for you, Kieran. If we can't make leading AI hugely successful, you can always go into flower delivery.
Well, there we go. Apparently, I'm very good. Well, who knows? I'm good at it. I don't know what my feedback score was because I didn't get to actually tap into there. But yeah, it was kind of like, I was hoping to at least share with you and have you thank me for the effort I've made, as opposed to shut the door in my face and go, get thanks, bye.
Some people just aren't.
Well, he wouldn't have known, would he? From his side, he'd have no idea. He'd just assume I'm the flower delivery guy.
Exactly.
What if I see him in the streets and he's probably like, oh, surprise! It's the flower.
I've got more flowers for me. Where's my flowers?
Yes,
right, you are off to the Beige Boat of Joy this weekend. You're going to enjoy the sunny weather and potter up and down the Thames.
I am going to go and do that. Yeah, but tonight, back tomorrow. So just a little quick little overnight. We're very excited to go. It's hard. It's summer holidays, as you know, so things to entertain the little ones is a helpful thing, and the boat does that.
Indeed. Well, you have a great time, chap, and I will see you on Monday for our what you described as a session, and I will rename it as a working session. We can do the session afterwards. Yeah, I'll buy you a beer afterwards.
Nice one. Right. I look forward to that too. All right, have a great
Bye-bye.
weekend. See you
Bye-bye.
later. Bye bye.